Good afternoon. My name's Tammy Eisenreich, and I'm a parent partner for the Lucas County Board of Developmental Disabilities. And today I have Stacy Harper with us talking about the wonderful things that Avenues for Autism has done and is bringing to Northwest Ohio. Welcome, Stacy.
Thank you, Tammy. I appreciate it. I'm excited to share with the group what we're doing as far as helping with funding and the different types of assistance that we provide. I'm hoping to give just a brief summary of Avenues for Autism because a lot's changed in the last couple of years. So everybody knows who we actually are. And then we'll dive right into the funding and how to get assistance, if that works well for everybody else.
Sounds like a great plan.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen then.
Okay.
And can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back up to the top. So we're Avenues for Autism, and Avenues for Autism is not necessarily widely known at this point in the community. It's becoming more familiar to families, but we started out in 2004 as the Great Lakes Collaborative for Autism, and probably more affectionately known as GLCA, although that sometimes became confusing because when we didn't say Great Lakes Collaborative for Autism, autism was taken out of it, and GLCA possibly meant not a whole lot to a lot of people. So we really changed our name around to be more indicative of what we do and who we are. And so Avenues for Autism, as I mentioned, started in 2004. And a wonderful couple, Susie and Bob Tyner, had a son that had autism. And Jeff's probably about early 70s at this point, but back at the time when he was younger, he was actually diagnosed with social psychosis, some different things that really weren't autism, and people didn't know as much about autism at the time. So he was treated, medically in those ways. And as things went on, they just thought something was different with the diagnosis he was getting and the treatments that he had, and they felt very strongly that he needed to be diagnosed appropriately, and they were learning more about autism, and they were reaching out to other families hoping for help. And once he did get the diagnosis for autism, it really started to make a difference, not only in his treatment plan, but in his life and his interaction with people. They often have said, or at least his sister, Mary Jane, and them have often said that, had they known more about autism in the very beginning, it'd be interesting to see where Jeff might be today. But he's done good, and I've met him. He's great. But he's been he was misdiagnosed for a very long time, and so he got a later start on some of the therapies and things that were available. And so they really wanted to create those opportunities as soon as they could for anyone that was diagnosed or even concerned that their child may have autism and want to get that diagnosis. And so they started what now is called Avenues for Autism. And a few years past, they used to work, and we always still facilitate the APN network. So we worked with other organizations, and we would raise money and then give money to the organizations that helped other people. And a few years back, they started talking about maybe we should just be helping the families individually. Like, it still supports all of the organizations, but they can refer them to us, and we'll make sure that we can hopefully award them and help them with the assistance. So Susie passed away a few years back, and they opened up the Suzanne Tyner Autism Assistance Fund. And that fund was truly to help families with the unimaginable cost of raising a child with autism, but really there's no age limit. And I'll touch base on that in just a moment. But many of the people that were coming to us initially were children, parents that needed help, new resources or therapies or medical equipment that they didn't have in starting out to give their child all of the opportunities they wanted them to have. And so as we know, just even recently, some of the ABA therapies didn't even take insurance until probably what, Tammy, maybe the past 3 years, 4 years, maybe it's been a little longer, but it hasn't, not everybody has been taking it as they are now.
Well, legislation said they were supposed to. It just, how what their coverage actually was, and now they are realizing, like you said, early intervention is key. So
yeah, so it's really exciting to see that happening too, as legislation changes and getting the support they need, but there's still so many out-of-pocket costs. So the Susan Tyner Fund has allowed us to give back over $250,000. Last year alone, we gave $30,000. We just had our annual breakfast. Our goal was $30,000. We are several $100s over that mark, but the Tyner family, or Mary Jane Luck, which is their daughter, has agreed to match any donations over that $30,000. So pretty exciting. I suspect by the end of the month, because we're closing it at the end of the month, being Autism Acceptance Month, that we will probably be somewhere around $31,000 or $32,000 to be able to award back. And that's very exciting because unfortunately, the need is increasing. I mean, even though there is coverage from insurance and whatnot, to provide all the opportunities that these individuals deserve, there's so much more that we can do for them. And so we were excited to get the response that we did with the campaign. But Avenues for Autism, aside from the Susan Tyner Fund, we really just want individuals, anyone affected by autism, to live without. That's our vision, and providing those opportunities is really important. Helping people to feel empowered, accepted, helping work behind the scenes, even with social opportunities and social programs to get them involved. And that's why the Autism Provider Network is so important to us, because we work together to identify those gaps and make sure that those opportunities are available. And so then we can be aware at Avenues, especially with the funding, on where those needs might be the greatest. And I just bring that up again, so you know a little bit more about who we are and what we're doing. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention that we just are starting our new Autism Navigation Service Program. So we have hired Alexis Eggenberger. She's on the phone. She used to be with Mercy Autism Services. She is a mother of a child with autism, but she's been in the field for quite some time, at least a decade, and very knowledgeable. And so families will be able to be matched one-on-one with case managers to work through their plan, to determine where they might be able to go, and then hopefully help us again, that whole group for Autism Provider Network, to identify those gaps and be able to help them. And so the funding, when you think about it, when you're working with someone and trying to create those opportunities, that'll become more evident to us as well, as where funding is needed and where those other things, whether it's, getting assistance from the state or their Social Security, for instance, or other funding organizations, there still may be a need, and that'll bring light to that. And so, as I mentioned, we've given over $250,000, last year alone, $30,000. But what we do is we give up to $1,500 a year. And so I want to explain that a little bit. So we have a few deadlines for applying for the funding. We have had individuals who have come to us and said, you know what, I really need single mom, works very limited hours to be able to take care of their son, ask for very little. I need $250 maybe to buy a printer and some paper so that I can make PEX cards at home. And it's like, okay, but looking at how we can help you, what else can we do? What more can we do? Well, I'm thinking I'd like to get them in therapy, but we don't have them signed up with anybody yet. Okay, you can still apply or just update us at that point throughout the year, and we can look to give you the difference up to that 1,500. So if, if we gave them 500 in the beginning, because normally if somebody asks me for something like that, I'm buying them like extra printer cartridges and extra paper, so they're not running out on the first go. But let's say we award them 500, they would still be eligible to get the additional 1,000 as something comes up throughout the year if they wanted to apply again during that year. You also can apply every single year, every calendar year, I say. Now, one of our deadlines is December 1st. I have a few parents that come to us every single year. And so what I've done with them is if they apply in December, knowing our next deadline isn't until May, and they're thinking ahead for that next calendar year, we won't pay out until January 1st or after January 1st. So they can apply, we can award them, but we won't send funds to, let's say, a speech therapist or occupational therapy or something that they may be requesting funding for until that next calendar year. And then if that's the 1,500, then they are done for that year as well. So I usually see that, I seem to see that more with like the speech therapy, because they're going on a regular basis. And I'm hearing more and more that insurance companies will pay for one or the other, OT or speech therapy. And so since they have to choose, they'll come to us possibly for some of the funding to help with speech therapy and run the OT through their insurance. So just a few things to consider. These are things that it doesn't mean it's the same for everyone, but I have seen that more than once with individuals that have applied. Now, things like sensory items, safety equipment, medical equipment, we usually give up to $750 for that. So we don't typically give $1,500, but depending on some of the circumstances, it's always up to our board selection committee to have the discretion to make exceptions should they need to. They've never gone over $1,500 per individual, but if it's close, maybe 800 or 900 for something, they try to help them and award them if possible. We really, if the funds are there, we do our best to make sure everybody gets awarded the funds. It's my favorite part of the job when I get to call somebody and tell them that, their application has been accepted and we are going to award their funds. The only time I've had to tell people, unfortunately, we couldn't help them with assistance is because they weren't within our territory or our footprint. I've had people call from California, Texas, and we totally understand. We get the need. It is so hard to tell them we can't help them, but there are local services in their area, and the donors who donate for this, their intent is for us to support families locally. So I'll get to that in just a second when I show you the website, but we made some changes over the last few years because really, truly, that has been probably one of the only times I've had to say, we can't award you the amount that you asked or anything based on your location. Sorry. So just wanted to make sure everyone's aware of that. So we've changed our deadlines a little bit. So May 1st, knowing they've got summer camps coming up, they've got different things as school is coming to a close. Where are they, could they do additional therapies, things like that over the summer months. September 1st, because we figure school is starting up and you have a good idea of where you might need those funds to assist you. And then December 1st, thinking that, again, that example I gave earlier, you're planning for the following calendar year. And if you did get funds in that year, it's really not a big deal. By the time I get back to you, it's usually just before the holidays, and most people aren't starting their therapy until January. So as long as you know you're awarded, we just don't pay it out until that next year. I want to mention too, we have several families that have come to us that have multiple children in their family that have autism. when we do the review, when I've collected all the applications, I put together a spreadsheet. They read through all of them, but we go through, and if there are families that have more than one child with autism, they are a priority. So we look at them first. So when we're looking and balancing the funds that we have in the Susan Tyner Assistance Fund, we will actually give a family, I've had several twins in the last couple years, they'll get 3,000. So they each get 1,500, and I manage and watch that. So one's not getting more than the other, but that family can get 3,000. If they had triplets, you know, we keep it going. So they'd have 4,500. So that's just for everybody to know, it's based on individual, not on family.
When I like the idea that they get a priority, that's, you don't always see that, so.
Yeah, and when you think about it being an average cost of $60,000 for a family to raise a child with autism, or medical costs are 4 to 6 times more than most other kids, and now you've got 2 or 3 or 2 in our situation with the twins and stuff coming through. Yeah, we want to make sure we're helping those families out right away. I often get asked too, and I just want to give sort of the overview before I get into the application. I also often get asked, you asked for our tax return, Stacy. Some people are hesitant because they think, well, I make a pretty good amount of money. You know, some people might say, I make 6 figures. There's no way they're going to even look at my application. We need it for a couple reasons. One, we're a nonprofit. It helps us just as we're giving funds out and those awards. It's good for us to have a tracking system in case the IRS or anybody would ever happen to come back to us. Everything is kept confidential. We don't tell how much people make or anything like that. But it's helped us a couple ways. In some cases, we've had individuals that really make a very low salary. I don't know a better way to say it, but their wages are low. They may be a single family parent, and we want to help them more. And they may come to us, like the example I gave in the beginning, they may come to us and ask for very, very little, and we want to maximize the amount that we can give them. So while I love that they're being humble and they're trying to be respectful of the funds that they need, we know that there's so many more opportunities for their children, and we want to make sure that we're maximizing the benefit that they get. On the other hand, I've had people that have made six figures, but they may have 3, 4 children and be the only family income for that particular family, because perhaps dad's working and does well, and many people would look and think, oh, wow, dad's got a great job, but mom had to quit her career or reduce her hours immensely to take care of all the children or to run them and transport them to different appointments, therapies, etc. And so when you weigh all of that and you're looking for $1,500 in the grand scheme of things, if we can help make that difference for that family and take some of that financial burden or stress off of them, that's what we're willing to do. Now, again, some people have asked for some interesting things. So I just ask that you really think about what that need is. I did have one person one time, I'll be on, they made an extraordinary amount and wanted a trampoline for the backyard. Which honestly, we probably would have given them that still because their child needed it. We don't know everybody's circumstance, but they never filled out the application fully. So every time we went back to them to say, we need this or we need that, there was some hesitancy. So that sort of, I don't want to say threw up a red flag, but we need to make sure we have all the information so that we can go through it, understand the circumstances that for the need, that direct need and that impact that can be made. And again, our intent is we want to try to give everybody what they've asked for. We truly do. So we're not looking at it on a negative way to say, oh, somebody's trying to fool us. You know, they're looking for funds and they don't need it. We don't know anybody's situation. Everybody has different situation. People that may make more have bigger bills, probably. Maybe their mortgage, their car payments, their therapies, maybe their insurance covers less. We don't know. And those
more
that
intense need for the child, the
it,
individual.
absolutely, because every single child is different. And so I just bring that up because I want to make sure that people are aware. Don't be afraid by some of the things that we ask for, but we do need that to verify. And if you turn everything in, it makes it go a lot quicker. And I am actually usually able, we say give us 30 to 45 days. I usually turn it around in about a week to 2 weeks. It really depends on when my selection committee can meet, but we try to schedule that before the deadline even hits, knowing that if the deadline's May 1st, we're probably meeting by May 7th, and I'll tell families that we should know something by the end of the week or early the following week. And as soon as I get done with those meetings, I literally start making the phone calls and letting people know. So we don't try to mess around and make people wait, because that can be challenging too.
Is your application open all year round though? Like, let's say someone finds out about you in February and they sit down, they have all their paperwork in March ready to go for camp. If they applied in March, are you starting to look at it then? And if something was missing or if you had any questions, would you reach out to them prior to your May 1st deadline?
So funny that you would give that example. I did get that. I had somebody that said, hey, just thinking ahead for summer, would love to send my child to summer camp. It's X amount of dollars. It was February. I'm like, are we talking about someone specific, Debbie? And I realized the deadline's not till May, but if you guys get a chance and you can look at it, well, then I started to get a few more applications for different things. And so I bundled them together and said, hey, listen, I reached out to them and said, I know it's not the deadline, but I'm going to do what we call an off-cycle request. And so we are going to review them. I should know within the week if it's been approved or not. I will get back to you. So there are times where as they come through, I might hold off for a week or two, just because people may have reached out to me with that very question. So I know some applications are coming, but we do take off-cycle requests. We like to try and encourage everybody to look at the deadline so that they're thinking ahead about their therapies and whatnot. Because here's the thing we didn't talk about yet. We don't really pay for things in the arrears. So we don't, like, if you got a bill that you had and didn't pay, we don't necessarily do that. We don't go back and pay them. We pay the provider directly for what's to come. So when you're doing your application, if you know that summer camp costs X and that's what you need, they should be sending us an estimate. You should have a copy of your estimate for that, or for speech therapy, or if it is early intervention or ABA therapy, whatever it might be. If you're buying, if you need an iPad and you want lamplight put on it and you want the app, we can get the iPad. If, let's say, iTalk doesn't have, any openings at that point, we probably can get you the iPad at that point if you've tried other resources first. And then I would need to get a gift card for you to put lamplight on so that you have full service of your lamplight app. Rather it being in my name, it's in the family's name, or for the child. So there's things that we do, but we're sort of paying it forward. And part of that too is we've actually had a few times where people have asked for a certain amount, had an estimate, and we've sent the provider the money that was requested. And then maybe they stopped services short. Maybe they didn't finish therapy, or it didn't quite cost what they needed. They got what they needed in a shorter time frame. In that case, it takes you as the parent or the individual out of the equation, except for to tell me and let me know that happened. And then I can reach out to them directly and say, hey, we sent you a check for $1,500 for 20 therapy sessions. However, it has come to our attention that you've only done 15. Therefore, we'd like you to send us a check back to Avenues for Autism for whatever those 5 sessions would cost. In which case, let's say you went to somebody else, maybe you had a conflict, you didn't like the therapist you were working with that we paid. They don't have to know that, but maybe in that case, they send the check back to us. We can then apply it to whoever your new therapy or whatever it might be that you've asked for assistance. Because you were already awarded that amount.
Yeah, I like that it kind of takes the parent out of that equation. It puts it on you.
Yeah.
Two businesses, you know what I mean? They're working.
It is, because at that point, it's a business transaction between the 2 organizations. So if we've given them funds to be able to execute a plan and they don't fully execute the plan, then we can go back to them and say, hey, we need you to come back. Some places have been great. They're like, hey, Johnny or Susie, they're doing great and they only needed 6 sessions and not 10. And so I've got this money here that you guys sent. Who do I send it to? Like, whose attention? How do you want me to do this? How do, we work with them. So a lot of people are more like that, a lot of companies, because they know we try to help them as much as possible. And we're working with a lot of the same organizations quite often.
You probably have other families that they're going to direct towards you for funding, so they don't want to burn that bridge.
Absolutely. I can tell you, especially because of the Autism Provider Network, that we have many families that use many of the same organizations for different needs. So you're exactly right. So let's go into the website, if that's okay, real quick. I just want to show people how to get there, how to get through the application pretty quick, and what we're looking for. Again, if you have all of the pieces together, it can be a pretty simple process. And the quicker I get everything from you and don't have to go back and ask for pieces and parts of your application that weren't submitted, the quicker we can get the award taken care of. So first of all, you go to avenuesforautism.org. And I did it this way and not just straight to the scholarship page, because most people would start here. They would just go to our main website. I'm gonna move over here in case you see it on the screen. So Avenues for Autism. And if you go to resources.
I'm not seeing it right now. I'm seeing your PowerPoint with Avenues for Autism slide.
Oh, you know what? I apologize. Sorry, because I didn't stop that. So let me stop that. Now, can you see it? Oh, hang on. Now it's going to make me restart. I apologize.
No worries.
Okay, now can you guys see it?
Yes.
Okay, so when I put in avenuesforautism.org, you get to this page, which is our main page. And if you go to resources here at the top, you'll see we have different resources. Susan Tyner Autism Fund. Click on that. And so you'll come to this page that explains, what we're trying to do, help you with expenses, how it works. It'll give you a full description of everything I really went over, how our committee works, how we keep things confidential, that you give us, authorization to talk to the provider that we're working with so that we can get billing taken care of. And then our application deadlines, which are May 1st, September 10th, and December 1st. And yes, we do off-cycle, as we call them. So if there are requests, you just really, really have an opportunity to get into speech therapy or something that you weren't aware of on any of those other timeframes, and you need our help, submit it. Don't hold it at that point. I'll work my best to work it in and get our selection committee to look at it. And if the funds are available, then you're probably going to get awarded that amount. But as I mentioned in the very beginning, the only time I've really had to tell people we can't help them is because they don't live locally in our footprint. So we added this. I think, Tammy, this was even your suggestion when we were talking a while back. But we added this. This is our counties that we serve. So we are basically Northwest Ohio, Lucas, Northwest Ohio, and then trying to pull it down here so you can see. But we also help a small portion of Southeastern Michigan. We get a lot of people from Bedford. We get some people from Bedford. Lenawee County, we may get a request from like Adrian, etc. So really, we did include Monroe County and Lenawee County in our support. So if you know somebody that's in those counties and they thought those resources weren't available, please have them check out our website. We'd be glad to help them. So I'm just going to say here, I'm going to pretend I'm going for funding and I put Lucas County. Now I can download the application. So it wouldn't let me if I didn't pick one of those counties. So here's the application. We don't have it as a fillable document yet. We do need to probably get to that point, but you can print the document off. It does talk about the $1,577.50 that I talked about. So like, again, if you're looking at things like an iPad or maybe you're looking for sensory friendly clothing, I get that. We bought vests, we bought t-shirt or like shirts, pants, things that have helped kids go on to kindergarten and whatnot, just to feel, better. Sensory item swings for the backyard. We've even helped people put in a fence in their backyard, especially during COVID when, they really couldn't go outside safely because they didn't have a fence around their yard, and mom and dad wanted to make sure they could keep a good eye on them. So they decided to put up a fence, but it got expensive. So we could help support that in at least a small way.
What about transportation?
So transportation is interesting. We are thrilled to help. We have no problem. There is an organization, and I feel bad. She was at the inclusion fair.
There's little tots and black
Thank
and
you.
white.
That's it. Okay, so that was the one. So we had a family that needed transportation, and what we did was we set up that we would get a monthly bill moving forward. So we agreed to $1,500 on that one. We agreed to $1,500. And they lived out, like, we'll say Fremont, Tiffin area, but came into Toledo area for services. So transportation company was willing to do it, but it didn't work out well for the child, like being able to do it. So we did agree to $1,500. The plan started out where we would get billed monthly, knowing that. So I talked to the transportation company. We decided I would get billed monthly for each time they were transferred until they got to the $1,500. Same thing happened. Another example, similar, not with transportation, but Caitlin's Cottage. Individuals like to use that for respite care. Mm-hmm. And so they will send their kids for like a few hours, perhaps, or a half day to Caitlin's Cottage for activities, which has been great for them. And so I just get a bill monthly for each time that they visited there, up to $1,500 on that. So again, those are just different funding options. And I should also mention, I'm sorry, even though I talk a lot about children and that it's about kids, we really don't have an age cap on who we help. If there is an individual that needs support, that is an adult, they should definitely reach out to us. We've actually sent some younger adults to camps. I know Camp Courageous brings in a lot of great individuals, and they have so much fun, and they've been going for years. And, parents sometimes are like, wow, they'd really love to go. And it may even be just $100 application fee just to help offset some of the costs. We've done it. So it's not just young kids. It's not like K through 5 or 6th grade or anything like that. It is everyone, but we do get most of our requests from parents for their younger children, and probably because they're just getting started. they're probably getting started on the different therapies and things that they need, and thinking about all of the costs that are associated with, they're looking for funding right off the bat. But we've also sent people, we've given them college tuition, $1,500, and they've gone to college, and we've been able to help with those costs, which has been nice. We've, helped pay possibly for a semester at UT, or Owens, or one of those areas, or maybe they've bought their books and other things. So again, very flexible. We're really flexible in what we're doing, because we want to help provide all the opportunities that we can for that individual. To apply though, besides the application, which I'm going to go through, which is pretty quick and easy, we do need verification of the autism diagnosis. So we do, while there's no age cap, we do only serve those that are on the spectrum, that have a verified autism diagnosis.
So it couldn't be, what about like Rett syndrome, PDD, NOS? I know that the DMS-5 changed probably, what was it, almost 10 years ago. And the autism had a Asperger's, which now technically there isn't an Asperger's. It's, you're either autism level 1, 2, 3,
So we get people that have Asperger's, and we've said yes, and that's how they've described it. But I will tell you from their doctor, it has somewhere in there that they have ASD, like that they've been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Or
and it has to be a doctor. It can't be an educational diagnosis of autism.
No. Yep, has to be a doctor. So that is a stipulation that we have at this point. Not to say it could never change. We're always open to different ideas. And Tammy, maybe you and I can get together at some point about some of those restrictions and changes that have been made, so that I can get that in front of the committee. But at this point, it does have to be a medical diagnosis signed by. We need a copy of your previous year's tax return. You can black out the Social Security numbers. We just need to see that family tax return. So if it's, married filed separate or married filed joint, you can send that. Divorce situations, whatever parent the child is, living with that's requesting it. We need documentation showing the cost of the program, services, or equipment. Gets a little challenging sometimes with the bigger healthcare organizations because of their own billing. But if they can give us an example of what the costs have been running, and that they estimate that the individual with autism is going to need X amount of sessions in that upcoming year, then we'll go with that. We'll gauge that. So if we know they spent $5,000 last year for therapy, and they're going to need the exact same amount this year, and they're asking us for $1,500, we're going to give them the $1,500. And again, it gets back to, if the services they ask for aren't rendered completely as planned, then we contact that provider to find out, where's that additional money that we had given you? We need that back, because those were donated funds, and the intent was to go towards that amount that you agreed to. We need documentation showing applicant enrollment of the program or service. Again, you're going to be sending us something with that organization's letterhead. It's probably an estimate, letting us know that yes, your child can be in there. And the reason they put it that way is, let's say somebody was going to go to a summer camp, or was hoping to go at a summer camp, and said, oh, this is how much it's going to pay, or it's going to cost, but they haven't even talked to the organization, and maybe there's not even an opening for them at that point. We need to know that there's intent, that you are enrolled in some way, and that now you're trying to require or to get the funding that you need to pay for it.
Yeah.
And then your family story. So sometimes people cut this a little short. Our board and our donors, quite honestly. They like to understand the impact that they're making, the direct impact they're making. So I prefer that you don't kind of like shorten that or blow it off. Like, we really want to know your story and your situation. We don't need to know every detail. I have had some people like maybe they've had a rough divorce or things with their son. I don't need every detail of that. Think about if you're applying for your child, think about from the parent perspective of helping them in their opportunities, what that child really needs, and when you started to begin to notice what it took to get them to the point that you're getting them to, and the opportunities available to them, or the lack of opportunities, and why you're so excited to be able to get them into X program or X service, but that it's costly. We get that. So please share your story openly. I won't use the stories if you choose not to let me share it beyond the committee. We hope that you'll be okay to share your stories. I do a monthly email blast out to all of our donors and our donor base so that they know the impact that's being made. And there have been some very heartwarming stories. I do have you review it before I send it, but it's your story. It's your story from you. I edit it maybe just to take some parts out that everybody doesn't need to know, and definitely not any of the financials and specifics or anything like that, but the story in general, so that other families can be encouraged and understand what we do. Like, who would have thought we would help somebody put up a fence, or that we bought printers and cartridges to help make PEX cards at home, but we've also helped with tuition and ABA therapy and, again, transportation. So we've been very flexible in what we do. And again, I know I've said it over and over, we want to make sure that we're providing as many opportunities as possible to those who need us. So
There
with
was
that
a
being said,
question about the script from the doctor. When they're submitting it, could it be like just, how sometimes when you're getting speech therapy and that's what you're asking for services for, and you get a script from the doctor saying that they need speech therapy, and they have an autism diagnosis, can it all be on one letterhead like that? Or do you need just one specific letterhead stating from this doctor, this child with this birthday?
Usually one is their diagnosis and document that's their official diagnosis, and then the other one is for the services from the provider. If it's a combination of the same provider is also providing the services, which I don't know that we would
No.
see that, or maybe I misunderstood.
Maybe because you can't.
You were asking.
Let me read it exactly to you.
Okay.
Could diagnosis be on a script that the MD sends over to get therapy? Example, they say needs OT twice a month and speech, and put diagnosis of autism on the script. Or do they need to get a separate form from the MD?
Yeah, a separate form from the MD.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, I didn't maybe ask to get, I lumped it all together too. So.
I see what you're saying, though, that, it'd just be quick to say, hey, they need to have this. We've seen that, but they've still also had the other documents. That was just in addition to. So they've sent us an estimate, and then, hey, my doctor's even asking for this. My doctor's saying they need therapy. This is the provider that's going to give the therapy, but then we also have the medical diagnosis. So hopefully I clarified that. And then, so if you scroll down into this application, how did you hear about us? We always want to know, does your household have more than one individual diagnosed with autism? Again, we give priority if there's multiples in your family. Even if you're only asking for services for one, you would still get that priority. I gave the example that we've seen several sets of twins, but and we've given up to 3,000 because there were two of them, but you may have an older child that doesn't need assistance right now and a younger child that does. And so we still would look at that as a priority to help that family.
But you would want, if they were applying for both children, you'd want 2 applications though, correct?
Correct. Yep. Because each
Helps
person
with
has their
tracking.
own story. Each person has their own story. Yep.
Okay.
And then, so applicant's name is the child or the adult that's, going to ultimately benefit from the funds, I guess is how we would say it. Their birthday, the guardian's name is the parent or whatever guardian, whoever their guardian might be, the relationship, where you live, very important because again, it's in our territory. So even if you clicked on Lucas County, if your address is not within our area, we're not going to be able to accept that application. And then obviously your tax return and stuff shows your address, so it all kind of matches. And then the amount requested, how much are you actually wanting? And it doesn't have to be, again, it doesn't have to be the full 1,500 or 750. You don't have to put in there that way. Some people say, hey, I need $1,040 for speech therapy, or whatever, though I'm just throwing something out. But the total cost is going to be $2,000. So we know you have some out-of-pocket costs, but for whatever reason, that $1,040 is the amount that they request. We have done that, and we've given them the $1,040. And maybe they have plans down the road that maybe they need something else, and they want to be able to keep the funds open a little bit for that additional amount. I'm not sure. And then other sources. So I'm going to use Tammy's other organization that she works with as an example. iTalk is here to serve the community and provide iPads to individuals that need them. There are requirements that obviously they have through their funding and how it works. If somebody comes to us and asks for an iPad, we generally try to get it for them, but I may reach out to Tammy or the individual themselves or the parent and ask, have you tried these other resources first? Because that's what they specialize in specifically, those types of things. So if there's crossover, we do that because then you can maximize your benefit, not to discourage you by any means, but to benefit you more. Because if iTalk can give you an iPad at the time, if they're able to do it, or some other organization has a lesser amount that they give and they can provide, let's say the iPad or some sort of medical device or whatnot, maybe we can help with the bigger amount to help with tuition or speech therapy or OT or whatever that might be. So I hope that makes sense, but we do want to know if you've had other awards. Or what if you only ask us for 1,000 and we know that the bill is 5,000? We're wondering, how are you going to pay the other 4,000? Maybe it's out of pocket, but maybe Project I Am is willing to provide some funding, and maybe Parker's Purpose is willing to provide some funding. And knowing that we can all work together to make that happen and maximize, what the potential is to get them in that program, that's what we're all trying to do. So we do want to know who else you may have requested funding from. And if you don't have anyone else, it gives us the opportunity to have that conversation and say, did you know you can actually apply up to 1,500? I know it's written in there, but when you're trying to do all this and juggle it, you're not always thinking about what's written at, 2 pages up. You read through it quick, you're filling out the form. We get it. We know what happens. So no worries. But I want to make sure we're maximizing your benefit. Again, so copy of signed diagnosis, previous year tax return, documentation showing the cost of what you're requesting, document showing enrollment in the program or service, and your family story. We do this so you can literally check each one as you have them before you send them on to us. You would then sign it. Then, because I mentioned we do exceeding the limits and we like to share, let us know. Can we use your picture? Can we use your family story? Maybe we can use first names. Maybe you don't want names shared at all. I tend to, if I'm going to use your story, I'm going to call you anyways. Some people haven't checked any of these. And then I've called them and they're like, oh my gosh, I'd be honored to have you tell our story. And they're sending me pictures and they're excited about it. But it does help me ahead of time. Sometimes I steer away from that if it's not checked. So if you don't mind sharing and hopefully inspiring others and letting them know that these funds are available, we'd love to be able to do that. And so then you sign off, and I encourage people, I do get some in the mail still, but I would encourage you to truly just print it off, fill it out, have your copies. If you can scan this document back in, scan your other documents. If you have that available to you, you can email it to me. Whenever I get one, I flag it and I put it in a folder. And then that way I know if I have off cycles or I have my May 1 requests, and I start putting the spreadsheet together for the review committee.
Would you take a photo of the document with everyone doing?
I have, yeah. Some people have, because they weren't sure how to scan it and they could email it, they've taken pictures of it. Just make sure it's clear. Because a few times I've had to go back and ask for another picture of it. So don't throw them away. If you're emailing me and you have the actual physical copies, put them in a folder for a little while until you're sure you got awarded or not. Just in case we have any questions, or maybe we can't read something, that you can refer back to it. So that's it. I know we're very close on the end of our presentation, and I know you've asked me questions throughout. Do you have any other questions? And if I don't answer everyone's question, you can feel free to call Avenues for Autism, or you can email me at sharper@avenuesforautism.org.
I've been trying to answer the questions as they come through the chat, and a lot of it is not specific to you. It was like other funding sources above the age of 20, 30-year-olds. So they were thrilled to hear that Avenues does help adults. If there's any others, there was a Social Security question, which I'll address after we're off tape. I would love to hear more about the Navigator program. I love that. There's another organization over towards Cleveland called Zane's Foundation that they do it. That's her mission. Her child is grown, that, her thing is, okay, have you done your board of DD? Have you, and she is amazing. But she is facilitated with Zane's, which is a nonprofit, all volunteer. The rumblings I hear in the community is that your program is going to be billable to insurance. So what insurances are you going to take? How would a family reach out to you to see if this navigation program would be available to them?
So we're working on that now. Where Alexis, I think she's still on. I'm not looking, but Alexis is working on credentialing right now and getting that in for Medicaid. We would have obviously other insurance organizations, and then we also need to look even at private pay. So all of that won't probably occur until we're thinking fall or end of year. So we just hired Alexis. She started last Monday, the 18th. It will take probably 3 to 6 months for credentialing to go through. Once that happens, we would be able to start taking clients. Okay. So until that point, we can get more information out. Okay. And Alexis,
my mind is already going to grants that would fund it. Like I can see parents that, Kate and my phones blow up daily because parents just need help. On this call, on this alone, we've had talk about Social Security, other things besides what you're funding. Parents need help, and we love doing it. But to think that there is going to be maybe a database and that's where maybe we need to talk after this, but I love the idea. So my thought is, okay, how do we make it accessible to all families? And my thought is, when I heard insurance, I cringed, in all honesty. I love you, but I was like, no, because if you don't have Paramount, or you don't have Buckeye, or, I have Blue Cross and Blue Shield, is that going to be one? I work for a major company, so my thought is this going to be something that I would be able to access? And parents then in turn said, okay, self-pay, how can I get a grant for that? So that's where my mind is just putting.
And that's the beauty of us having our funding, depending on those needs. If it would come into those situations, we have funding, there's other funding. But from the insurance perspective, we do hope to have the bigger insurance companies to cover. And there will be some behavioral, mental behavioral supports that are built in. That's why we're working with licensed independent social workers and case managers. It's not just referrals, they're matched. There'll be a treatment plan, there'll be follow-up, but there are going to be things that we do that don't get billed to insurance. There's going to be additional things, obviously, that as we're referring them won't go through insurance, but there will be several things that do.
Well, look what you do already. When you look at a family's application and try to reach out and find out where their other needs are to get to that 1,500. No, I definitely knew that. I just was, when I talked to Zane's Foundation over in the Cleveland area, it started with collaboration with the Cleveland Clinic because that's where her son did his program. Now he's in his 30s and she's still so passionate about it. And she wants other families to not have to struggle like she did, and she's constantly updating. And we were talking about a database. Some of the questions on here today were about where is a list of these organizations, like you've mentioned. So I put, both iTalk right now is in the process of updating our searchable database. We have almost 700 funding organizations all over the country, every disability, pediatric cancer as well, all the different. So there is lists and it can be overwhelming. So how do you shrink that? And that was the thing that we're looking for, is how do we shrink it and make it not so overwhelming, because there's so many other things.
I can answer there will be a database, and I can answer that we started working on that. We've been working with a licensed social worker. No, we've been working with a UT intern currently who has been developing that list, calling, understanding what insurances they take for different providers in the area. We've even looked at where are some places you can get your kid a haircut that is autism friendly, what dentists, those types of things. It's in the beginning stages. It truly is. But we need that for our navigators to have, but also to share within the community. So be glad to do a different presentation and have Alexis run that for you, right, Alexis?
I was going to say, I am here. I'm sorry, I'm not, on camera. I was driving, but Tammy, we can certainly talk offline. I know that insurance has been a barrier for a lot of families, and that's the last thing that we want to be a challenge in this program. So we will do whatever we need to do to help secure grants or private pay or other funding sources so that our families can access this service.
Awesome. Well, I am going to stop this recording. So I do want to thank you, Stacy, for being here today. Next month on May 25th, the last Wednesday of May, we will be having the Community Fund Ohio on with us at noon. So I look forward to seeing you guys back then.